Welcome to Rethinking Death.life, the podcast that looks at death in a different way and life. And today we are so privileged to have Naomi Rohde with us. And she is an amazing woman. She's been the national president of the National Association and the international president, and is an amazing woman who felt called several years ago to talk to widows. So the next few sessions are going to be specifically for widows. So welcome, Naomi.
Well, thank you. And I will just add a tad to what you said. It's the National Speakers Association, lest they think I was the president of the United States of America, which would have been kind of cool too.
Maybe that might have been. I'm not going to make any political comments here, but it might not have been such a bad thing.
She would have been awesome.
Awesome. Good president.
You to know, Kathy and Kim, that this is an amazing series, and I am so privileged to be a part of it. So to start with you, Kim. Oh, Kim, I just want to know your story. I want everybody to know your story. I want to know when you met your husband.
Well, I met my husband. I was a freshman in college. It was my first week there, and I was only 17. I was young. I was at college, and there was a softball game for all the pre-professional groups in the area and at the University of Maryland. And so I was chosen to be pitcher because I had been a pitcher in my little high school local softball team, so I knew how to do it. So I was pitching, and there was this really cute guy on the other side named Jim Harms, and he got up there. Now he claimed that he hit 3 doubles off of me, and then he was rounding the bases. He was kind of checking me out. I'm sure he struck out 3 times, but we really can't remember. He thought it was 3 doubles. I thought he struck out, and really he does remind me was slow pitch softball. So the likelihood of his story being the real one is probably pretty good. But I met him in a softball game, and he wanted to go to dental school. Now I had not thought of going to dental school, although I was a zoology major, but he wanted to go to dental school, and I thought, he was really cute. Maybe if I got a good job as a dentist, this was the 70s again, he would marry me because, that's how we thought back in those days. And so so I decided I'm going to try to go to dental school. Now there's one problem, of course, because I was born missing some fingers on my right hand, and my grades are really good. So I went to my instructor, my advisor, and I went to his room and I said, "Hey, I'd like to go to dental school, but I only have 7 fingers. What do you think?" And and this is back in the 70s, those of you remember. And he was sitting back there, and he just looked kind of shocked when I said that. And he had a big cigar. He was smoking on his big cigar because you could do that in those days. And he looked at me and he said, "Of course not. They would never accept you with 7 fingers. What are you thinking?" And so at that moment, my dreams were dashed, and I thought, "Oh, I'm never going to be able to marry Jim. This plan is not going to work. I'll have to find a different plan because this dental school thing isn't going to work." And I got up and I was walking out the door, and I turned around, and just as I was turning around, he leaned back in his chair, put his feet up on the desk, smoking a cigar, and he goes, "But maybe if you were a man, they might let you in." Whoa, that was the most wonderful thing he could have ever said, because at that point in time, I was going to dental school because I was so mad at him. And so instead of changing careers, I changed advisors, went to another advisor, Dr. Potter, I was terrified of. She was a geneticist and was very scary, but she turned out to be a wonderful advisor. She said, "I don't know if you can go to dental school. Let's find out." And had me go up to the University of Maryland, where I found out that one hand holds a mirror, which I could do, and the other hand goes to dental school. So went to dental school, and I got the guy. So that's how I married him, and that's how I snagged him.
So how long were you privileged to be married to this guy?
I was married to Jim for 44 years. We went to dental school together. We served in the United States Public Health Service together, and we owned our own practice in Farmington, Minnesota together. And married for 44 years.
Told us before he died, or how did he die?
Well, in 2007, he was diagnosed with liver cancer, and we thought we would lose him then. And that had very poor prognosis. Anybody who diagnosed with cancer, you go online and you start looking up what's the prognosis. Well, Cleveland Clinic says you have a 5% chance in 5 years. Well, I don't like that idea. Mayo Clinic says it's 5%. I don't like that. So very poor prognosis. But he was able to get a liver transplant. It was really a miracle 6 months later. They gave him localized chemo. It hadn't spread from the liver, and then he had a liver transplant 6 months later. So everything was looking good at that time. We were so grateful, and of course I was working full time. He was just working kind of part time as he recovered. But 6 months after Jim had the transplant, we had the most horrific thing happen to us in the loss of our son Eric by suicide. He was this amazing, just easy kid. He was brilliant. He was recruited by Columbia. They were recruiting him. He was an engineering student, and he went to Columbia because he could study engineering and be in the jazz program in New York. It's like that was his dream. He could do both at Columbia, and he loved it. He went there. He was elected to student government. He made the dean's list his first semester. Everything was going his way. He was in the jazz program. He was in plays with the Barnard students, and he was having the time of his life. And he came home after his first semester, and as any parent knows, when your child comes home and they're like floating on air because things have gone so well, you float on air too. But 2 weeks after he went back to Columbia in January of 2009, his girlfriend broke up with him, and 45 minutes later, he was gone. He had taken his own life in 45 minutes. And that's where that impulsiveness of his brain that made him such a great jazz pianist, because that's what jazz is all about, impulse, right? And that brain that wasn't fully developed just kind of, was a fatal cocktail. So we lost him then. And then it was just a horrible time of learning to deal with each other's grief and deal with each other's just the whole idea of just trying to survive after such a loss. We were able to to work through that over many years. And Jim had the cancer that he had did not come back, but about 10 months after Eric died, he ended up getting quadruple bypass surgery and a valve replaced. And I believe I call that he died of a broken heart, because he had his heart checked out as fine before his liver transplant, because they're not going to give you a good liver if you don't have a good heart. And a year and a half later, he was in surgery, and he did live for about 12 more years. So I did have him for 12 more years, but his heart was always he was limited because of the heart disease and so on. And his liver was doing fine. He was very proud of his liver, but his heart basically got him. And I consider that he died of a broken heart over the stress of losing Eric.
Well, I hear you talk about this, and I just feel the grief.
Yeah.
I feel the grief, and I'm sure our listeners do. And in a real sense, your widowhood is compounded by your son's death before that,
Yeah.
and everything that transpired since then. But dear one, you have found ways to move beyond that. Now tell me how we met. How did we met?
Well, it's Naomi was the biggest speaker in dentistry, and she was everywhere. And if Naomi was anywhere nearby in the Upper Midwest, my husband and I would try to go to see her. And you were giving a seminar in Island. What's the name of the island?
Mackinac.
Mackinac. Thank you. Mackinac Island. And Mackinac Island. And we went to see it. And right before that happened, I had been on a trip with my daughters and niece and my office manager's daughter, looking at colleges on the West Coast. And we looked at Westmont and Santa Barbara, and my office manager's daughter, on a calm day, on a very calm beach, went out and took a dive into a sandbar and broke her neck. And if you can imagine, she was paralyzed for life. And it was so traumatic. And also, of course, traumatic for her mother, who was our office manager. And I was trying to kind of come to terms with all of this in my mind. I was going back to work, trying to run a business. We had an office manager who was very upset with me. She blamed me for that. I blamed me for that. I mean, I was the adult there. I mean, of course, I couldn't have done anything, but still, that all those guilts and shames and all those things get into your head. And we were coming out to Mackinac, and I was just, I was in a bad place. And you were there, and you would always ask couples to come, and you would sit and counsel dental couples. So we went and we sat there, and I told the story, and you said something to me that changed my life at that time. You said, because I said, I don't know how she's going to forgive me. I don't know how she's going to forgive me, and of course I didn't know how I was going to forgive myself. And you said, is she a Christian? Does she know God? And I said, well, not really. She's really mad. If there is a God, she's mad at it, mad at him. And no, I don't really think she considers herself a Christian. She goes, and you said, well, Kim, she can never forgive you. She doesn't know how. She's not capable of forgiving you. And when you said that, it released a huge burden off of my shoulders, just with the understanding that that's something I'm never going to get. I had to accept that was something I was never going to have. I was never going to have her forgiveness. So I had to forgive myself. And we were able to kind of move forward after that. And so I met you years ago with that in Mackinac Island, that one short meeting. And then a few years later, my daughter, I developed nerve damage in my drilling finger. So I'm breadwinner of the house. I can't win any bread anymore because I can't practice dentistry. So I went through that trauma, and I was at home trying to figure out what to do. And my daughter decided to go, she's a lawyer, decided to go into dental law, and she wanted me to be her consultant and also to be kind of a speaker, to speak for her program and so on. And so I went to a speakers meeting, and there you were. You were like, here is Naomi Rohde, the former president of the International Speakers Association. There you were on stage. And so I came up to you and just relayed to you that story, how you had changed my life. And your husband, Jim, was there. And he said, oh, would you like her to be your speaker coach? And I was like, heck yes, I want you to be my speaker coach. So you became my speaker coach, and you really helped me get through that time to kind of figure out, I had done a lot of speeches as president of the Dental Association. So I had done a lot of those types of speeches, but I had not really done a lot of dental education speeches. And you really helped me to do that. And so that's how we met. And then 2 days after my husband died, I got a call from you, and I'm still in that shock stage. So it's like, did she really call? But you really did. You called and you said, I've really felt God speaking to me to start a widows program, because many of my friends are now becoming widows. And I think it would be such a horrible thing to have happen. I want to just nurture them and start a widows program. Would you like to be in it? We're meeting next week. Again, heck yeah. Sign me up. And it's been a lifeline to me that you started this program. We ended up writing a book about it. We ended up now writing, and I'm even now leading a widows group in my new church here in Kansas City, and I've led another one. And so I found that doing that has given me, when you go out and you help other people trying to navigate where you have been, it's one of the most healing things you can do. One of the best things you can do to move forward in your life.
Well, you have moved forward in your life, and it doesn't mean that you don't still feel the grief, but I want our people to understand how many kinds of grief there are. And often they are they pile up on us, whether it's a loss of a parent or a child or a terrible accident to somebody. There are lots of kinds of grief, but nothing like losing your spouse. So I really honor you for being involved in this ministry, and I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you. Thank you so much, Kim, for your sharing.
Thank you. And I think we have a question. We in our podcast, we try to ask a question for our listeners to just let them think a little bit deeper into some of the issues we're addressing. And I would really like for all of our listeners, I wrote a book called "Are You Ready? How to Build a Legacy to Die For." I would like all the listeners to really think: are you ready for a catastrophic personal loss? Are you ready if somebody were to die? And what can you do if you're a widow? If you're married, what can you do become more independent, so the loss wouldn't be quite as traumatic. But ask yourself, and if you're not ready, it always helps to kind of go and prepare yourself, prepare your life, make sure you get everything in order. So if something traumatic does happen, you have all the resources you need to manage it.
Wonderful. Thank you for that question.
Thank you so much, Naomi, for being part of our session today. Bless you.
And if you like our podcast, please like and subscribe. We're having
And share to
yes,
everyone
share
who
it,
thinks
please.
it could
Everybody,
benefit.
everybody, especially this special series on widowhood.